Hi everyone, my name is Melanie Grant and this is C&M Glass. Today we're talking in your class for 2021 ICD-10-PCS coding on our first chapter discussing medical and surgical section for root operations. This is part one of this section of our class where we'll be talking about the specific root operations or the types of procedures that are done within ICD-10-PCS and how to identify those so that we know where to look when we're looking up a code. Okay, so up to now, at this point, you've looked up different types of procedures based off of the procedure itself and where it was located in other sections that were not part of the medical and surgical section. For this section, all of your codes are going to be starting with character 0 for medical and surgical. We will be, of course, going into this further when we talk about surgery coding in section 3 of our class. Okay. Today, our focus is going to be on root operations that are cutting out or off and taking out of a body part. There's a couple of appendices that I want you to be aware of and a couple of terms I'll be going over with you today in this lecture, and then you're on your own to try your hand at coding for some of these procedures. I've put in several videos showing you exactly what's being done, and it's up to you to go in and take a look at those, code along with the videos, paying attention to the terminology that's given, and see if you can determine exactly what root operation you'll be using. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about terminology. One of the biggest things that you'll find within the PCS coding, which may be different from clinical documentation, is the difference between excision and resection. Let's say that you have a patient who comes in for a breast biopsy. Now, a breast biopsy is going to fall under excision despite how they say, how they did the biopsy itself, so long as the biopsy is cutting out from the body. Okay, if they did the breast biopsy and at the time determined that it was cancerous, maybe the provider does a breast biopsy with a resection of the tissue that was cancerous for a complete lumpectomy. Okay, there's a couple things going on here. So this is where I want you to take an opportunity to look at Appendix C's A, B, and C. My favorite is on page 11 for Appendix C because it gives you some examples of exactly what is an excision, what is a resection, and also each of the other root operations. So if you look here in your ICD-10-PCS codebook at page 811, if you have, of course, the same codebook that I have, which is 2018 Expert Edition from Optum 360, you may have a different page if you do not have the exact same edition. You'll notice here that under the example given for excision, a breast lumpectomy is still considered some or of a body part, but not all. Okay, because the lumpectomy is not the entire breast. So even though it was complete lumpectomy and the provider used the term resection, you're still going to be looking at the root operation for an excision, not a resection. And so for that example, you would end up with your third character. We'll skip over character 2 here. Third character B for excision. Now, another thing to be aware of, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, if your breast biopsy is being performed, a biopsy is always going to have a diagnostic qualifier X to indicate that they did this for diagnostic purposes. Anytime the term biopsy is done. So they don't have to tell you it was done for diagnostic purposes because they've already told you by saying a breast biopsy. Now, in the example where a resection would be done, for example, a total mastectomy where they remove an entire breast, then instead of the B, you would have a T for resection. And they may have the exact same documentation, but the difference is instead of a complete lumpectomy, a complete mastectomy was done. So pay attention to those. Okay, some other ones and examples that you have, detachment, cutting out or off without replacement of an extremity at any level. Okay, so this is another term for amputation. And so anytime they remove one of the limbs from the body, you're going to be looking at detachment. Excision, we talked about. Extraction, this one's kind of a tricky one because they're talking about pulling as opposed to cutting. So that's a really big important factor. If you're pulling out as opposed to cutting off, you're going to be looking at the difference between extraction. And you can think of like a teeth extraction, or in here they give you an example of a suction D and C, which is going to be a drainage and cutterage. So they're extracting body parts or all of a body by pulling out, not cutting off. Okay? So those are our cutting out and off. Taking out of a body part, this is referring here, we have three different options: drainage, extirpation, and fragmentation. And you can see in here, if you're looking at the appendix for your three definitions, they have the objective or procedure is to taking or letting out for drainage, and of course you're thinking about fluids with that one. We can't exactly drain the skin, but we can drain the blood. So you want to think about fluids whenever you're taking or letting out. Extirpation, taking or cutting out, this is your solids. And then of course fragmentation, this can be done externally if you have like a stone that's inside of the kidneys. You may have some fragmentation done by laser where they're breaking it up so that it can come out on its own. And so they give an example there, lithotripsy, which is that exact procedure. Okay, so your fluids or gases are going to fall under drainage. Extirpation is only a solid matter such as a thrombectomy. And fragmentation is a lithotripsy. And how do I know the difference between taking or cutting out extirpation from the difference of taking out a body part? The difference here is from a body part versus a body part. So always keep that in mind. A lumpectomy is part of the body because it grew within the body. It's part of the body breast tissue, whereas a thrombectomy is going to be something that is floating within the body. Okay, so that's a big difference of being part of the body or coming out of the body. And you want to make sure that you pay attention to your anatomy with those, and always, always, always look up your coding terms if you're not familiar. That's all I have for this week. Make sure you take a look at all of the other videos from YouTube and go through your reading exercises and chapters. If you have any coding questions, we'll be doing Coding Clinic this week on Tuesday night from 5:30 to 7 in the JS 209 room. Thanks, guys. Have a great one. We'll see you next time.